Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to wish a happy belated birthday to Diane Nordstrom. I'm sure she got Sunday afternoon text from all of you guys. Um, this past weekend, uh, you know, continue to learn quite a bit about ourselves. So both nights I thought we got pushed and challenged by a really good serving team, tough defensive team, a team that was really good at going off of our hands and out of system, and we got pushed and challenged, and I liked how we responded. I think the first 2 weekends we've done a good job of playing when clean volleyball at the end of sets, and I thought we continued to do that this past weekend. Liked how we responded after we lost game 3 on Saturday and came out in the fourth set and played awfully well. A lot of people got a lot of time out there on the court, and I thought when people were subbed in, they were maintaining a high level of play. So certainly enjoyed seeing that.
Questions for Coach Sheffield?
I've got one.
Yep, Alec.
Hey, Kelly, depth-wise, I mean, you guys have always had good depth, but just describe the depth of your team this year. It seems like you kind of just touched on it, but when you get to sub people in, I mean, it's just kind of one weapon for another, it seems like.
Yeah, we've got some depth on the team, definitely more depth than what we've had since we've been here. And we're relatively healthy. And so people have been, when they played a high level in practices throughout the week, and if there's, then we're going to stretch it out a little bit more. And I thought that would, that's certainly been the case. And in the practice gym, we had 4 different left side hitters start this weekend, which is pretty unique. And I thought all 4 of them had their moments of playing pretty well. Everybody knows what Grace and Molly can do. It's that Deanna Kraft and Jade Dimps, both of them have been playing really well. I thought Deanna's all-around game was really good this weekend, especially her passing and her defense came in and served some good balls. Jade is attacked awfully well on Friday night, and I thought took some good swings. And then we've got a lot of different people coming in and passing and serving for us, and so we definitely utilized it.
We had a question from Dennis Punzel.
Yeah, Kelly, Georgia Civict came in. I'm not sure if you knew what you would be able to get from her from a health standpoint. And you've had a chance to look at her in competition for a couple of weekends. What are you seeing?
Gio's been huge for us. It's you're right. She's still running into shape health-wise, and she's trying to get her sea legs and her mojo back, and I think she's starting to get to a point where she's feeling pretty comfortable out in the court and with the teammates. We've gotten on long serving runs with her. I think we're point scoring. When she's going back to serving, I think we're point scoring the best off of when she's back serving, and in that rotation, she's added an awful lot to our passing and defensively. She's made some really good reads and put our setter in a really good position. We've been converting off of her digs pretty well. So every week she's just getting more and more comfortable and playing better and better. And it's been huge for us to get a healthy Gio.
Dennis Kraus had a question.
Coach, apologize for the big picture question, but what was the biggest thing you did to get the program where it is currently?
Probably have good people around me. It's we've got a really good, not just coaching staff, but just the staff around that have been together for year after year. We've got a really good strength coach. Kevin does an amazing job. Our Bianca with social media that does a great job, and that has impacts on recruiting. And our Christy, our athletic trainer, they're just continuity with the people around the players. And so when you get into a year like this, it's we're not having to train people. Everybody kind of knows what their role is and their job is. I'd say that's probably a big key. Probably another part is just how well that our players and our former players are at communicating their experience. It's something that we don't have a lot of people transferring out, and so I think their experience here is pretty good, and they're able to relay that message on to others, and especially to recruits, and it's something that others want to be a part of.
Further questions for Coach Sheffield?
I got one quick one. Kelly, I know it's early in the week, but Rutgers this weekend, I think they just split with Indiana this weekend. Do you know anything yet, real concrete about Rutgers coming in?
That's a good question. We're just now finishing up our film of this past weekend. Just starting to dive into them a little bit, seen a little bit of video, getting into their stats a little bit. They had a great battle with Indiana this past weekend, picked up a Big Ten win. They've got a new coach in, and I know everywhere. I remember her playing back in college. We'd coached against her team, and, she was a tough competitor, and where she's been prior to Rutgers, she's really done a good job of turning some programs around. And so it doesn't surprise me to see him pick up a win this past weekend and playing pretty well. I'm sure they're going to be excited, coming off the win, but also just the energy that the new staff is bringing in with them. But, it's a lot of the same players that they had last year, a majority of them. And, just we're hoping to get to week 3. We're excited about it. And I know we'll be seeing an energized Rutgers team.
Lance had a question.
Kelly, obviously the uniqueness of this offseason and season in general led to a sense of unpredictability for your team and every team as to how the product would look at the beginning of the season. With a couple of weeks to evaluate now, where are you maybe in relation to past years and maybe to where you thought you might be?
There's we talked earlier a little bit about the depth, and we're utilizing that. I think when you're bringing people in and out, maybe there's going to be some, it's not going to be as smooth as if you're leaving the same group in there all the time. But, I think we've been a little bit smoother with quite a bit of the subbing than maybe what you could expect. We kept our hitting errors down quite a bit. That's certainly being over a year from playing. You're probably thinking that there's going to be more attack errors than what there's been. But we've managed those. Part of it, a big part of it is the ability of our setter, and but the hitters are being smart with the ball. But one of the things that just is so much fun, but today's a fun practice for me because we get to sit down there with the team and have a film session and kind of dive into all the things that we've got to get better at. And those things are still screaming at us. There's some areas that we're doing a good job in. I think we're getting better defensively and taking some smart swings offensively. But there's still so many areas that we've got to continue to get better at, and we will. Today will be a big session about how we can be better servers for 6 rotations, how we can be better defensively out of system. So there's still a lot to squeeze.